Jarvis, fire up the Hulkbusters. It's time to take a look at every single LEGO Marvel Iron Man mech, Hulkbuster, and figure ever made. Welcome to Duckbricks. Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and today we are going to be taking a look at every single LEGO Marvel Hulkbuster set ever made, or Iron Man mech. You name it, if it is something related to Iron Man that was a special build, it is going to be showcased right here. With one exception, there was one kind of little build for kind of the prototype version of the Hulkbuster that was one of the mechs that appeared in Iron Man 3, and that one, since it's on my minifigure wall here where I'm showcasing all of the Iron Man suits, this is not going to be featured in the video other than, well, obviously right now, but for the most part, we will be taking a look at all of the other LEGO Iron Man builds where you can see all his suits in minifigure form up there. But now it's time to take a look at the actual builds themselves. So LEGO has done Hulkbusters and Iron Man size mechs and buildable characters for pretty much as long as the LEGO Marvel Superheroes theme has been running. The first one that we got was actually a CCBS, or Character and Creature Building System Iron Man, in the same system that they did Hero Factory and Bionicle G2 and the Star Wars figures in, and that was pretty rudimentary. It was really the first time that we were getting CCBS stuff for superheroes. The system itself had been introduced just the year prior in 2011 for Hero Factory 2.0, so they were still kind of playing around. It was still kind of on its training wheels, very rudimentary figure. But then, later on, we would eventually get some more buildable figures as well as actual mech suits for Iron Man. The next one we got was the Hulkbuster for Age of Ultron, which obviously was a big one to get a Hulkbuster for. That one was a really important one because it featured pretty heavily in the movie. And yeah, the build is pretty rudimentary. It's okay for what it is. It wasn't anything super crazy, but we did get it. And then from there, they kind of just exploded, because you can see mounted on my wall here are pretty much all of these sets we're going to be looking at today, from the massive Hulkbuster Ultron Edition from Infinity War, as well as the two 2018 and 2023 Hulk-style Hulkbusters for Bruce Banner. You have the couple from What If, you have an Ironmonger suit, which is way overscaled, but I guess that kind of works for the Hulkbuster itself, and you even have the miniature mechs. They're doing these kind of $10 little mini mechs, and they've done a lot for a ton of different characters. As you can see here, that is quite a lot of mini mechs to get, but we did get the two Iron Man ones right here as well, and that was just the start because, of course, everybody knows it's the subject that a lot of people have been wanting me to make a video on. Just last year, we did get the massive $550 Hulkbuster, which, yeah, it's not that accurate. There are a lot of complaints about how this is built, but hopefully throughout this video, we'll be taking a look at all of these builds, and you can actually see how they've evolved over time, and what I think of all the builds in general, which ones are my favorites, which ones are my least favorites, and of course, I do want to hear your opinion as well. So do let me know in the comments below what you think, and without further ado, let's jump right in and see all the Hulkbusters, and give Duckbricks a subscribe if you haven't already. Let's go. Alright, so here we have every single Hulkbuster or Iron Man figure that LEGO has released pretty much ever since they started doing Marvel superheroes in 2012. I will go in chronological order. We'll be taking a look at every single one of these, from the What If Hulkbusters to the two massive UCS style ones to some standard buildable Iron Man figures that aren't really supposed to be in scale with minifigures. They've done a lot of these. As you can see, there are so many Iron Man mechs, Hulkbusters, you name it, and we're here today to rank them all and to give my thoughts on every single one of them, because this has been a really requested video. A lot of folks want to know my thoughts on the big boy, the $550 Hulkbuster, and we are getting there. First of all, though, we have a couple of small ones. This was the CCBS Iron Man from 2012, so this was kind of their first attempt at doing a buildable figure Iron Man. It is in the same style as the other buildable figures, which they pretty much refined with stuff like Star Wars buildable figures, which were several years afterwards. 2012 was one of the first years we actually got CCBS, but obviously back in the day, they were doing superhero CCBS, or Character and Creature Building System sets, and Iron Man was one of them. They did a couple for Marvel and a couple for DC. Moving on from that one, though, which was kind of more in the Bionicle system, that isn't really like any of the other ones on this list, we can take a look at the next one in chronological order. The first actual Hulkbuster we got was for the Age of Ultron movie in 2015. This was the Hulkbuster, and it came with a little bit of a kind of holding cell for the Hulk as well. Came with the Hulk Big Fig. The entire set retailed for $30, but because it came with a Big Fig and a holding cell, this probably would be worth around $20, $25 or so nowadays. Probably closer to $20. Moving onwards, the next Hulkbuster that we got was actually for the next time the Hulkbuster actually appeared on screen, which was for the Infinity War movie in 2018, which you can see right here. So this retailed for, I believe, also around $30 to $40. This was the Hulkbuster Smash Up. This is actually the one piloted by Bruce Banner in the Avengers Infinity War movie, and that was the one we got in 2018. Also around the same time, we got a UCS style one. This was only $120, where you can imagine this was pretty much the perfect Age of Ultron style Hulkbuster for $120. Now, I will say that I have actually personally modified this one based on instructions online from YouTubers like ChubbyBots, as well as a few other YouTubers out there. So first of all, this had a big issue where the blue Technic axles were showing through the shoulder pads. That has been fixed. I have also given it knee joints, so you can bend the knees, which was not present in the original set. So the original set did not have knees, so do keep that in mind. The legs were pretty much just fixed, but I did add those on based on recommendations online. And I also added waist articulation to a more significant degree. Otherwise, though, it is pretty much the standard set. This came with not only the big Hulkbuster for $120 back in the 2018 timeframe, but it also came with these extra kind of robotic hands, a building stand for the Hulkbuster itself, with the punching arm that you can actually add on and swap out the arms if you wanted to. So this was a really fun, customizable one. Moving on from that, going forwards a few years, in 2020, we got a ton of Hulkbusters. Actually, before that in 2019, for Avengers Endgame, we got the War Machine Buster. This was based off of concept art, but it never actually appeared in the movie itself, making this one actually a non-canon one. And this one was $40, so this one was a little bit more expensive. Not one of my favorites, but this was the next one chronologically. And then came 2020, we got a ton. Oh, we also got like a little Iron Man mech here. I believe that was also 2019 or 2020. I think 2020. So that was just a little $10 kind of mixel joint style mech. And moving on in 2020, we got a ton because we got one that was kind of comics-based themed as well as based around the Avengers video game. So this has a very flat top, which is kind of accurate to how it appears in the comics and video games. But this was not related to the MCU. It was kind of its own thing. And this retailed for $40, came with a rescue figure, but was pretty much just the Hulkbuster by itself. And we also got a ton of Hulkbusters for What If. So What If aired around that same time. So we got one for the Captain America, Captain Britain, actually, the Captain Carter type of thing here. So we had the Captain Carter Hulkbuster associated with her, although this one was piloted by Steve Rogers back in the kind of first Avenger type time frame. And we also got one for the kind of Tony Stark going to Sakaar episode, which was actually delayed and pushed back. So this was not actually in the initial first season of What If. It transforms into a race car if you rebuild it, which I presume is something we will see on screen. The episode has been pushed back to What If Season 2, and as of the recording of this video, it has not aired yet, although it does seem pretty accurate from its very brief appearance in the What If Season 1 set of finale episodes. Moving on from that, in 2022, we got a brand new Iron Man figure. This was a $50 buildable figure with a light-up arc reactor, and this was a really fun and posable one. I did a full video on this and talking about how this could be the future of construction when it first came out, so definitely go check that out if you want my in-depth thoughts. And then moving on, let me see if I'm forgetting anything. Oh, also in 2021, we got the Infinity Saga. This is the Ironmonger figure, so obviously not a Hulkbuster, but this is basically the same vein of the Hulkbusters. It is Ironmonger. It is a lot larger than he should be. But yeah, that is that one. And finally, also in 2021, we also got this little $10 Iron Man mech, which kind of was based sort of off of Iron Man 3 in terms of the minifigure included, although it also was just kind of based off of the comics and games. Lastly, just last year, 2022, gave us this big $550 Hulkbuster. And this is for $550. This is what you get. And yeah, this has been the source of a lot of controversy online, and a lot of folks are not big fans of this. And I think that I'm honestly kind of mixed. I like the build a lot. It was a fun build, and I really don't like a lot of other aspects. And we'll get into that when we actually talk about the individual ones. Lastly, for 2023, just this year in January, we got a new version of the Infinity War Hulkbuster piloted by Bruce Banner. This retailed for $50 US, so it's a pretty steep increase from 30 to 50, but it is so much more accurate. The shaping is so good. This is pretty much the perfect version of this iteration of the Hulkbuster we've ever gotten. So for $50, it's a steep price for what you get, but it is a really good model. And with that, so far, there are pretty much all of the Hulkbusters here. You can see every single one of them. And it's time to talk about the individual components of each of them and what I like, what I dislike about them, and do a little bit of ranking, where I think the easiest way to rank them is to rank, I probably think these two would be in their own category, and these two are in their own category. I can probably do rankings of the little ones and then talk about how these two stack up. So I'm going to get the elephant out of the room first, and we should probably start off by talking about the big one, because I think that's what everybody wants to hear me talk about, is the big that's heavy. $550 Hulkbuster. Let's bring him over, talk about him by himself. So what's the deal with this set? So this is based off of the Age of Ultron movie. So obviously this was the very first MCU style Hulkbuster. Just looking about it in terms of a Lego build, just completely ignoring the fact that it is based off of something, it has source material. The legs don't move, but I don't expect them to. I wouldn't have expected the legs to move whatsoever. So the legs are fixed. Like, everything about this is fixed. You can't rotate the feet. You can't bend the knees. You can't bend anything. This is just a statue. Like, these do not move at all. They wiggle, but they don't move. The arms, however, are pretty posable. You have a lot of friction in the way that the arms rotate back and forth. So you can have the arms go up and down, which is great. You can have the shoulders bend back and forth like this. You can adjust the shoulder armor, although the way that they adjust is kind of odd, and we'll talk about that in a second. You can bend the elbow, which is nice, so the elbow does fully bend like so. And you can move around the hand. So that hand's down here. Let's try to get this positioned upwards, like he's kind of blasting it out here. And each hand has a little miniature light inside of it. Unfortunately, Lego has not figured out how to change the color of the LED they use, so they are fixed with the yellow color. They don't know how to do it in blue, is what a designer said, which is odd to me because I don't know why you can't just change the color of the LED. But as of right now, we are stuck with yellow, so it is a little bit weird having the blue arc reactor and repulsors and just a yellow light shining through, but it does light up. And the center chest also lights up. You press a button on the front here, so where is it? Up here. And that whole thing lights up, and this is actually a brand new piece that was introduced just in 2022 for the Motorized Ideas Lighthouse. That was actually something they did just for this set to kind of allow the light to project outwards. It's a really cool looking piece. It works really well, and it's kind of cool how they were able to recolor it in the satin transparent blue specifically for the Hulkbuster. So that's cool. I do like that. Now, this set also introduced a ton of specialized new drum lacquered pieces. Drum lacquering is a process where Lego actually coats the pieces in a metallic gold color, making them a lot more expensive than normal pieces to make. Now, previously when they were doing chrome, they had to make all new molds for them. Nowadays, since they're drum lacquered, they do not have to make a new mold every time they want to drum lacquer a piece. However, though, it is a lot more expensive to do that. So they had to introduce a lot of them, especially these big pieces, brand new for the set. And that's the Hulkbuster. And this is actually hiding one pretty cool feature, which a lot of folks have said it's not worth the compromises made in terms of the structural integrity, which are not structural in terms of the overall aesthetics, which I agree with. But the feature is that you can take the Iron Man figure sold separately for $50. So if you want both of these, the total is $600 for both of these. But you can take him and you can actually place him inside the Hulkbuster. And I don't know if the set was designed around this. I'm not really sure if which set was designed first, but if you're careful with it, you can kind of get him inside. I'm trying to squeeze him in there. Come on, let's get your hand in there. And yeah, so this just goes all the way down. He's not quite in there yet. It is a lot easier to do when you can actually see the inside, which I cannot right now, but he actually does go inside there, and it does close up with him inside, so it kind of closes up around him. It's supposed to sit down a lot lower. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay, something broke off inside there, but yeah. So this does hold the $50 Iron Man in it. And that's really cool. It is super cool. I love when sets are cross-compatible with each other. It is very cool to see sets be cross-compatible and allow you to do different things with your sets and combine them. I think that's really cool. Now here's the thing. This looks barely anything like the actual Age of Ultron Hulkbuster. You know it. Anybody can look up a review of this. So many YouTubers have given their thoughts on this. I would be repeating thoughts of many by saying this, but there's a few big issues here that we can talk about. First of all, the most obvious thing is the way the chest is done. Funnily enough, if you look at the one from 2018, the $120 one, the chest is done a lot better. The proportions are supposed to look like this. I mean, this isn't perfect, but it's a heck of a lot closer than this. First of all, the arc reactor is supposed to be a lot further up. The arc reactor is kind of on the midsection here, like it's almost, if you look at it human size, it's kind of right here. The arc reactor should be on the chest area, so it should be moved upwards. I would say the arc reactor should be where the button is. If you swap the positions of the button and arc reactor, that would be perfect. However, you can't do that because the chest pads are so big. They're so thick. I think the chest pads, I mean, if you look at the actual pictures, pull up a picture of the Age of Ultron Hulkbuster, they should be ending here. This bottom part should end like right here. So you have so much more kind of verticality to it. And because of that, the proportions of everything else are thrown off because the arc reactor goes right below the whole chest kind of muscle area, but the whole chest muscles should be a lot shorter and they should be up here. And that's kind of where the arc reactor should be, is right here. So everything is shifted down, and that's not the only thing. I mean, the waist is all right. I mean, that's pretty much good. The arms are okay. The way the shoulder armor is mounted still isn't quite right compared to the actual source material. It is mounted a little bit too high off of the actual piece. So if you actually rotate back here, so I'm going to rotate the arm down here and take a look at the way that this is mounted, just get that attached. There's a lot of gaps here. Like, there shouldn't be any gaps in this section. It really should be just fully covered up. And yeah, I guess that the gaps do allow it to articulate. I mean, you can move it back and forth, but I would have rather had it be fixed instead of having the ability to move it back and forth, but have it be mounted so high. So that's more of a minor issue. I mean, that's something that can be fixed fairly easily. The front chest cannot be fixed without just basically redoing the entire thing. So that's a much harder issue to fix. And then the other big issue is that if you again look at photos of the Hulkbuster, the ankles flare outwards. They do not taper inwards for the ankles. They actually flare outwards. So it should be like this. Like, the ankles are super thick. They almost kind of go down to the ground. So you should have bricks that just go like this, almost like a big chunk of bricks here and here. But for whatever reason, they made them really skinny. Now, I would have understood it if they actually allowed you to articulate the pieces. If they allowed the feet to be moved around, if you could pose the legs. Yeah, I can understand sacrificing that. But the legs are fixed. Like, this is a statue. So, if anything, this was the one time where it would have made total sense to really do that large flaring out on the base of the ankles. And for whatever reason, LEGO just decided not to do that, which is very odd to me. And here's the thing, for $550, you can get a lot of stuff with $550, but if you're buying a replica of a Hulkbuster for $550, especially a LEGO replica, I would expect the proportions to be a lot better than this. Now, if we got, let's say, for example, a $30 or even a $50 toy, and the proportions were just like this, and it looked kind of wacky, I wouldn't have complained that much because it's so cheap. But if you're the type of collector to want to spend $550 on a Hulkbuster model out of LEGO, you either have to be really into LEGO, really into Marvel, or you must really love Iron Man and the Hulkbuster. And if you're into the latter two, if you really love Marvel, and if you really love Iron Man and the Hulkbuster, you probably know what the Hulkbuster is supposed to look like. And it's not this. I mean, there are glaring issues that are pretty big with this, and I'm kind of shocked at how this even happened because for the most part, LEGO's Icons or 18 plus style sets are really good. They are usually very accurate. They're super screen accurate down to the exact detail. But if you overlay a picture of the actual Hulkbuster over this, it just looks nothing alike, and that's really odd to me. I don't know how that happened. Yes, it is very cool how you can put the Iron Man inside. That is a cool feature. I love that you can do that. But I don't think it was worth, if there were sacrifices made in order to allow this to be fit in, I don't think those sacrifices should have been made. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me because at the end of the day, you're paying $550 for this. It's not like this came with the set. This was a separate thing. You are paying $550 for this model, and that's just a little disappointing when the proportions are just wrong and it's just not good in terms of the way it looks. Now that being said, this was a really fun build. I had a blast building this model. I really enjoyed building it. The building techniques are really, really well done. I mean, the fact that you have such heavy arms that hold up, like this is not going to topple over ever, that is a feat of engineering. That is genuinely impressive. How you can pose the arms and they really hold up to being posed. You've got all sorts of new colors of pieces. Going over to the back here, you've got like this special like classic space style windscreen. It was like the X-Wing UCS windscreen, but then they did it for Benny's spaceship, recolored in pearl gold for like no reason other than to be able to open up the back. Yeah, that's really cool. There's a lot of cool things being done with this. But I feel like to make the proportions of this model right, it really does require a pretty significant workaround, especially around the front chest area. So yeah, you can guess what I'm going to say. This is nowhere near as good as this. I think it's now time we turn our attention to this model. So yes, I have modified this to be better than the official set. Absolutely, this is a lot better than the official set. They do not have blue axles showcased here, and it has knees. But ignore that. Just pretend that you have blue dots here, which is kind of annoying, and pretend it doesn't have knees. You can still move the legs. It's a big model. It's not minifig scale. It is a large model. You have a light in the chest. That is something that does light up. Now, again, it is orange because LEGO still hasn't figured out how to make lights blue, which is bizarre to me. I don't know why they do that, but yeah, it is orange, but you can light up the chest. Sure, you can't light up the hands, but I mean, the hands can move. You have elbow articulation. You have pretty much all the arm articulation you would want. And you can open it up, and yeah, if you want, you can put a minifig in it. It's not minifig scale, but it has room for a minifigure, so you can do that. This is all you need. I mean, if you want a big scale LEGO build Hulkbuster that is based off of the Age of Ultron one, the proportions of this are way better than the proportions of the other one. Because for one, I mean, yeah, they made the angles movable, so they weren't able to do these super like chunky solid builds for the ankles splaying all the way out, but at least it doesn't really taper down to a super narrow point. They're still very wide. Like you can tell they're supposed to be very wide ankles. I mean, that's how it's supposed to look. Everything about this just looks right compared to the original one or compared to this new one, which just like has the super narrow ankles and the weird like wide pectoral muscles. It's just strange how that happened. And for $120, this came with a stand. So you had a full stand where you can kind of play around with it, put out fires. You can cause the arms to move around. You have the punching arm, so you have this whole function where you can swap out this arm and kind of use it to punch the Hulk and put him to sleep like that. So that's a completely different arm that you can use with this that kind of mounts on the stand here. And yeah, this I think is probably my favorite Hulkbuster. In my opinion, it is the best Hulkbuster that they have done to date. That is at least kind of a larger scale. Even compared to some of the best ones, I mean, maybe the only one that comes close is the newest one from 2023, which is the Infinity Saga one. But still, I mean, that's pretty good for what it is. But this was just almost perfect. And with minor modifications, again, I'm not a mockist. I was able to follow instructions to modify it slightly, just removing the blue pins here, adding in knees. Those are really minor modifications as compared to fixing this up versus what you would want to do or need to do for the big one, which is some major, I mean, this is just a whole rebuild of the chest to change that. You'll need a lot more dark red pieces to fix the way the ankles should look. Fixing this is going to be a lot harder than just fixing the minor mistakes and stuff with this, which is why I am a big fan of the 2018 Hulkbuster right here. And then we can move in and take a look at some of the smaller ones. We'll get the Iron Man figures out of the way because, well, to be honest, I did a full video on these Iron Man figures already, so I'm not going to repeat myself. You can check out that video if you want, but I really do like this. I think that the future of construction construction plus action figures like Bionicle lies in figures like these, which are really articulatable, but they also have a lot of detail, fully built with system. Yeah, it's not perfect because the way that the shoulder pads are mounted is really awkward because if you remove them, you can see the arms are mounted really low on the torso, like the arms should be mounted up here. But you know, I mean, they got to work out the kinks. This was the first time they did a system buildable figure like this. So for what it is, you've got like adjustable flaps on the back for the jets. You have the light brick in the center as well, so this does light up on the chest. Still orange, not blue. Can LEGO please change the LED color? Because every set that includes a light brick now feels like it is an Iron Man like set with blue lights, but this is really good. And it's cool to see how LEGO as a building system has kind of evolved, using the character and creature building system here for a really rudimentary style build for Iron Man, and then going over to this fully detailed system build. I'm a fan of how this one turned out. But with that, I think it's time to take a look at the smaller Hulkbusters. And these ones, to be completely honest, I mean, they're all kind of the same, or a lot of them are very similar. We'll start by grouping together, getting the $10 mechs out of the way. So starting off with the $10 mechs here, I like them. I like the little Marvel mechs. I do like how they have kind of swapped over to SCCBS, or the more fixed joints, because while these have a lot of articulation, the limbs are very skinny, and they definitely do look a lot bulkier for the new 2023 versions of the Marvel mechs. So I do like what came before, but I appreciate what they have now. And for what they are, they're pretty good. They're pretty okay. I mean, nothing super special here, just little $10 mechs to play around with. So they're okay. Moving on to the other more modern Hulkbusters. One thing I actually don't really like is that I feel like a lot of the Hulkbusters have a very weird fixed knee joint here, where they're kind of just squatted downwards and their knees are at permanent 90-degree angles. You can see it on both of them here, which is kind of a shame. You can see it to a lesser extent on like this one here, but this one's done a little bit better. It's just very obvious when you have just the knees going arcing like this, but I think in general, Hulkbusters like this are okay. The one that really bugs me is the War Machine Buster, because they didn't give him elbows. You just have the hands that rotate like this. So his elbows are fixed at 90 degrees, which means you just can't really pose this whatsoever. You can't get this into a cool looking pose because you can't do this. You can't bend the elbow. It's just fixed at 90 degrees. That's very odd to me, and I don't know why they did that. I feel like they have thankfully moved on past that. This was kind of an older era where they were, I mean, this was 2019, so not too long ago, but it still feels like this is just so outdated compared to what LEGO can do nowadays. Moving on from this, though, we can take a look at some of the more modern Hulkbusters. Again, so these are supposed to be kind of a similar one. So this was the Age of Ultron one, the very first one we got, which actually for being the first one isn't bad. I like the use of CCBS for the limbs here. It's super simple, but thankfully you can actually move the legs on ball joints and not ratchet joints. I always prefer ball joints to ratchet joints. You have this whole thing which opens up, and this whole thing which folds downwards to reveal an Iron Man figure inside if you have him in there. So this is a cool way to kind of armor it up, and the proportions of this really basic rudimentary one are somehow better than the $550 one. So for 30 bucks, not too bad. Kind of small, but you do get the Hulk Big Fig as well. Onto the Infinity Saga ones, or the Infinity War one. This one was the first one. One thing I like about it is that you can actually have a gear function. So you have the smashing gear function, kind of similar to what you would see for the Bionicle sets near the time. And if you don't want to use it, you just kind of push this in here and you don't have to use it. Then it's fixed on the ball joint. The way it opens up is nice as well. This whole thing just opens up like so to reveal the Bruce Banner figure if you have him in there, and then this just closes up like this. It's okay for what it is. Sure, the shaping isn't perfect. It definitely is not as good looking as it should be in terms of being accurate to the screen, but I like how you can move each and every one of the toes. The legs could have used a little bit more articulation. I mean, definitely feels like you have the kind of squatting function there, the squatting syndrome there with all these Hulkbusters, but it was okay for what it was for 2018. And then we get this phenomenal one for 2023. And just look at the shaping on this Hulkbuster. I just love the way this is done with the curvature on the way the front arc reactor works. You've got these particular pieces introduced for Speed Champions being used in expert quality here for the shaping of this complete build. And it opens up just like this. You just have the one helmet open up, just like in the movie itself, and you can put a minifigure inside. So that's pretty much all you need. Now, the thing here is that this does not have knees. The legs are pretty much just bent fixed at one angle, but the legs are done a lot better because at least they're not 90-degree angles, they're at least slightly bent. The only annoying thing is that you can't actually move the feet more forwards past this point, because I guess they were worried that it would topple over. So what they've done is that because of this, you kind of have to have it almost like leaning backwards. It almost looks like it's about to take a seat. If you want to have it, it is so sturdy that you can have it in this walking pose where obviously the toes are doing most of the work to keep it down. So that's actually a pretty good pose. So you can actually get it in a pose like this, but then the feet are not bent on the ground, so you can't really have it in a standard standing up pose, just on this weird kind of angled forwards thing. That being said, you can move the elbows, you can move the arms back and forth. The armor on the shoulders is pretty much perfect. You can angle it slightly like that. And yeah, you can even rotate the hands. So this is pretty perfect. I mean, $50 is a little high, I will say. For a 2023 set, yeah, $50 for just this. I mean, you get this, 2 Outriders, Okoye, and Bruce Banner. But $50 for just the Hulkbuster here is like, this should be 40. I think realistically this should be 40. But price aside, as a build, this is really good. And one of the best small ones, probably the best small scale one they've done. Moving on to some of the other random ones. I've got a couple of the what if ones. They're obviously very different than standard Hulkbusters, but they are pretty much the same thing. I mean, you've got elbow articulation here in terms of the click joints, which is odd, but good that we have that. I wish you could also move the hands, but it is what it is. This was the Steve Rogers kind of Hulkbuster type vehicle here, so that whole thing opens up just like so. And then you just have a very simple kind of leg construction, which again does kind of feel like it's squatting over, although I do like the inclusion of the jetpack as well. Moving on to here, we have the Tony Stark Sakaar one, and these are built in almost identical ways, although unfortunately, it doesn't have elbows. Not really sure why it doesn't have elbows, it just doesn't have them for some reason. And you can take these wheels off the back and turn it into a race car. It honestly doesn't look too good as a race car. I won't do it right now, it's not a huge transformation, but the way it works, basically, you kind of remove the legs, remove the arms, and then you just have it tucked backwards, and you place these where the arms are actually attached. So, super simple transformation. These are just okay to me. I definitely feel like they're probably some of my least favorite Hulkbusters just in terms of like the fixed knees, and they just feel like they're kind of squatting over. Although I do like the colors of the Sakaarian one. Next up, we have the Marvel game, Avengers game, as well as comics one. A lot of people laughed at how flat the top was when it was first revealed, but that is actually pretty accurate to the comics. I mean, the comics do have a very flat top for it. I mean, maybe it should be bent a little bit more, but aside from making a new piece, I don't know what LEGO should have done here. You have full articulation. Thankfully, you have the elbow articulation as well, which is nice. And I actually really like how the legs are done on this one. They're done in a really similar fashion to the 2023 version, where they're not bent at 90-degree angles. You can actually move them back and forth. And oops, that one just popped off there. That's weird how that popped off. And unfortunately, it does also mean that you can't really do much in terms of the feet articulation. So the feet are pretty much just fixed and they cannot be moved too much, but you know, it's good for what it is. I think in general, this was an okay build. Lastly, we have the final one here, Ironmonger. One of my favorite things about Ironmonger is that as you move his arms, the pistons on the back actually move. So if you look here, the pistons actually do articulate because they are on mixel joints. So you can move the arms in pretty much any direction and it does stay together. I mean, for the most part, unless you go crazy with it like that. But yeah, you can see it just fully bending all the way depending on how you want to angle the arms. And that was a really cool aesthetic feature of the Ironmonger, who was kind of the first Iron Man villain. It is completely out of scale, but I do also like how the piston detail is also moving onto the legs themselves. Like you can see it on the sides of the legs, which is cool. You've got the feet, which also can't move that much, but you know, come to be expected at this point. And you also have the gun, so you have like a stud shooter on this side, you have another type of stud shooter on this side. Overall, a very cool looking build in general, and I'm glad that we finally got an Ironmonger build to face off against Iron Man. This also glows in the dark, which I think is very cool as well, and that just opens up like so. Very similar head construction to the What If mechs. And yeah, with that, we have basically summed up a look at every single LEGO Iron Man mech, Hulkbuster type of figure they've ever done. I would put, if I had to just rank them all right now, I mean, let's go ahead and do it. I don't know if this is the worst, but I mean, this is maybe in the middle somewhere. This is easily the best. So number one, my favorite, is this one. We're just talking about builds here and not really about value. So the next favorite build is probably the 2023 one. And I think next up, it's a good question. I really like the Iron Man figure, actually. I think this is a pretty good figure, so that's the next one there. I like Ironmonger a lot. I like those pistons, and I like the way the legs work. No knees, but it's still okay. And then probably I would say, like, CCBS I have a soft spot for. Like, I'd put CCBS Iron Man here. Very simple for what it is, but I do like it. Then I would say probably, I don't know, the game one. A lot of these are blending together, to be honest. I like the gear function on the early 2018 one, so maybe I'd put that one here for the ranking. Here, 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 and then like, yeah, I guess it's like, I'll throw this one in for the ranking here. I mean, like, I don't know. It's hard to rank this with the other Hulkbusters because it's just something completely different. Just disappointing how the scale is just completely wrong. And then we would say, like, yeah, I like the smaller ones. So these are about the same. They're equal. I would say the two What If ones are about the same. And then the worst one is the War Machine Buster because you can't move his elbows and his knees are at fixed 90-degree angles. So from worst all the way to the best, this is my ranking of every single Iron Man mech and Hulkbuster they've ever made, and it's just such a shame because when they said we were getting a $550 Hulkbuster, I was so excited. I love Iron Man, I love Marvel, I love Lego, and I love the Hulkbuster. So all those four things I really liked, and I mean, there were a lot of rumors saying, oh, first of all, it's going to be the Age of Ultron one or the Infinity War one, and I didn't care which one it was going to be. For $550, I was so hyped. And then we saw the first image of the box, and I was looking at it, and I was like, something is wrong with the proportions here. Pulled up a picture of the 2015 Age of Ultron Hulkbuster, and it's just not right. It's so unfortunate how the shaping of it is just incorrect. Overall, though, I will say, this was a very impressive build. Putting this together was a feat of engineering, and absolute kudos to the designer who made this. I mean, even if the shaping and the proportions are very blatantly wrong, I definitely feel that this was a very impressive build. This was a really good build to do overall, and I am impressed with most of it. I just feel like if this part was cleaned up, like you just fix this part here, fix the ankles, this would have been number one. This would have been the perfect set because everything else is just so good. Yeah, the gold parts in the arms, maybe they're like a little too big, but who cares? The shoulders, yeah, they're a little too high, but if you just fix this and fix that, this would have been the perfect Hulkbuster. So it is what it is. That is my ranking of the Hulkbusters, but I am very curious. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of the LEGO Marvel Hulkbusters? Which is your favorite? Which is your least favorite? Do you feel the same way I do about this one being the best in terms of value for $120? I mean, this was just so good. Sure, it's modified, but even without my modifications, big fan of this for $120. I'm curious what you think of the Iron Man figure. This has been pretty controversial. Some people I've seen really dislike it. I understand why you might not like it. Maybe as a Bionicle fan, you'd really not like it, but I think it's pretty good. I mean, I like what it is, and I like it for what it is in general. And I think the perfect way to end this is to just, I mean, let's take a look. This is an image of the 2015 Hulkbuster, right? This was the movie form of it. Look at the way the feet are done. See those wide ankles? This is what I'm talking about. The ankles actually get wider as it goes on, right? It gets wider as it goes on. And then look at the way that the armor is mounted up here. You've got the very short kind of pecs up here, and the arc reactor is in the chest. The arc reactor isn't down here, it's in the chest. Now just hold these side by side. And it just isn't right. That's the thing. The shaping just is not right. It is such a shame that that happened because I really do feel that this had the potential to be one of the greatest LEGO Hulkbusters, or even one of the greatest LEGO sets ever, but now it is infamous. It is literally infamous now. People will remember the model as just being very inaccurate. And that's too bad because there are so many good things. There's so much to love about this model. And I feel like a lot of the good things have been drowned out by the very vitriolic response or the negative response to it being wrong in proportions. Which it is, but I also do feel like there's good things about it. Like, the way that this is done, so cool how you can move the arms back and forth. That's really well done. You have such good shaping for most of it. Like, the knees are really well done. Everything here is good. Most of this is good. It's just here and here. Even the feet themselves are pretty perfect. Like, the feet, no complaints. Just ankles, chest. That's all I have to say. I'm sounding like a broken record at this point, so I will go ahead and wrap up. Again, let me know in the comments, what are your favorites? What are your thoughts on each of them? What's your favorite small one? I mean, we talked a lot about the big one and the second biggest one, but I'm curious, what is your favorite small one? Because I had some problems like ranking them. I had some trouble doing that. So I'm curious, do you think $50 is good value for money for the 2023 one? I'm super curious what your favorites are, so let me know in the comments. What is the perfect LEGO Hulkbuster to you? Has LEGO made the perfect Hulkbuster yet? And if so, what needs to be done to make one perfect? With that, we've summed up this look at every Iron Man mech Hulkbuster ever made, even the Ironmonger ones, Steve Rogers Hulkbuster, and War Machine one as well. Not Don Cheadle, Colonel James Rhodes. Don Cheadle's the actor. But here we have every single one of the Iron Man things, the Iron Man mechs. Thank you all so much for tuning into Duckbricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks so much, and bye for now. Alright, and with that, we have summed up every single LEGO Marvel Hulkbuster from the very first Iron Man buildable figure in 2012 all the way up to 2023. We took a look at the big one from 2022 and shared my thoughts. We also took a look at all of those little ones up there, which are now back on my wall hanging. This has been a really fun time getting a chance to look at how LEGO has evolved the style of Hulkbuster over the years, what kinds of builds that we would get for Iron Man and other mechs, and it's interesting because I feel that by looking at the Hulkbusters, you can kind of see an evolution of LEGO mechs in general. Obviously, LEGO first had mechs in like Exo-Force and even stuff before then when they were doing really rudimentary mechs, and all my mechs were on the wall back there, which we just took a look at. But the Hulkbusters are a constant for LEGO Marvel superheroes. I feel that as long as we have Marvel as a brand for LEGO, we will keep getting Hulkbusters in some way, shape, or form. It's almost like they're Luke's Landspeeder. Now, some people would say we've gotten too many. I would say that, maybe that's the case. I could have gone without like 2 or 3 of them, but I do feel like a lot of them are pretty unique and distinct. The What If ones, despite not being the best builds, did give us a unique aesthetic. Same with the Ironmonger, which I actually think was a really fun build. And of course, these standard Iron Man style Hulkbusters are great as well. And that buildable figure is actually really good. I know it's controversial, but the January 2022 LEGO Iron Man buildable figure is one that I actually really like. It could have been a lot cheaper though. With that, we have summed up our look at all of the LEGO Iron Man mechs, Hulkbusters, and builds for Iron Man himself. Let me know down in the comments below which are your favorites, which are your least favorites. What do you think of the $500 Hulkbuster? I think that's a question I would love to hear from viewers. What do you think about it? Do you think that LEGO should have even attempted it at that price? I definitely feel that it was a worthy endeavor, but I definitely also feel that they could have made it a lot more accurate. And yeah, there were a lot of constraints around making that set. It was developed, I believe, during COVID when the designer didn't really get a chance to consult with other designers and be able to talk to them and iterate the design from there. You just basically had to put it together at home and make it a LEGO set, which is a lot different than how LEGO designers normally do things. So yeah, there were a lot of constraints, but for the most part, it was cool putting them all together, and I certainly had a lot of fun showcasing them for all of you. With that, we have summed up this video. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thank you so much, and do check out the links in the description below to my Big Cartel LEGO store and my Bricklink store as well. Plus, you can see other ways to support the channel. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to stay tuned for even more LEGO content on the way. Bye for now.